Andy Dennison.
Present.
Ben Vitale.
Here.
Chris
Chairman.
Petras.
Here.
Paul Pinkney.
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman.
Present.
Keith Batman is excused. Joe DeForest.
Present.
Charlie Ripley.
Where is Rick?
Joseph Bennett.
Here.
Elaine Daly.
Here.
Pat Mahonick.
Here.
Timothy Lattimore.
Here.
Michael Didio.
Here.
Ryan Foley.
Present.
Tucker Whitman.
Here. If you all stand for the pledge and a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so I called this meeting so we could have some discussion. I guess the focus of this one will be our DPW. We also have a couple of resolutions that came up. Appropriately, they kind of fit in the category. Before we get started, I'd like to say I don't really have a lot prepared as far as the direction of this. I don't really have an agenda as far as where things should go. Obviously, I have a personal opinion, but wherever this body would like to take the discussion as far as our DPW goes versus a highway department versus whatever other options might be floating around out there. We got here down a path I think a lot of us weren't too happy about as we were going down it. It was a hurried path. Myself, I was uncomfortable with how we got here and at the speed we got to a DPW. I was never fully convinced it was the way, but I was willing to give it a shot. And I think we've given it a shot, and now we need to discuss if we like where we're at or not. There's been some changes. There's been a few issues along the way. And at that, I would like to open it up to individual legislators that would like to speak to the topic before we get too far into it. Elaine?
Yep. Thanks. So in anticipation of the meeting tonight, I did go back and trace how we got to this point in hopes that we would raise some real questions of where we could go from here. In June of 2018, we received a memo from the then County Administrator, Justin Woods, outlining his 2018 priorities. One of the recommendations, as you remember, was to hire a highway superintendent and create a Department of Public Works. At the time of this June memo, he said he was working on a local law that would expand the $71,000 highway superintendent position into a Director of Public Works, and he estimated that salary to be between $90,000 and $110,000. The new DPW director would oversee 4 divisions: highway, buildings and grounds, parks, and weights and measures. This new organization was supposedly to increase coordination among public works and capital project management for better planning and budgeting. In addition, I believe, very important to Justin, it would decrease the number of individuals directly reporting to him. The CGR report also included a similar recommendation. The report stated, thinking about public works in a more integrated way would certainly be able to create a deeper staff bench and natural cost training of employees with similar responsibilities. There was also the potential, based on CGR, to share support staff among those departments. It was in the CGR report, but I also had heard that Justin also talked to them about including that recommendation. But fast forward 6 months later to December of 2018, when just prior to our consultant brought in under contract was about to be out the door, Justin asked we consider a last-minute plan to fill his 2 jobs: a Director of Public Works at a salary of $103,000 and a deputy at the salary of $97,000. He justified the 2 hires as the DPW director having the administrative background that would expedite the merging of the various departments, and the deputy having the experience needed to run the day-to-day of the highway. He justified this new plan as affordable by abolishing a foreman position and an MEO job, thereby reducing the overall budget by $13,000. Though the legislature has taken recent criticism for pushing against the administrator's recommendation and refusing to relinquish power, the fact is, we approved this last-minute plan and moved it forward based on his recommendation. Well, a majority of us did anyway. Now at this juncture, we're left with our current situation and the need to re-examine the decisions we made. Basically, we're back to square one, having the same leadership vacuum we faced a year ago. There is a recent resignation of our DPW director after the removal of the deputy, the rehire of the interim deputy DPW director to oversee the day-to-day operations of highway, the recent request to add back the abolished positions, which supposedly made the new plan affordable. As it appears, they should not have been eliminated in the first place. There has been no significant change in the responsibility of the superintendent of buildings and grounds, other than him not being requested to attend all the meetings. There has been no talk or movement in combining or cross-training staff or to merge job descriptions needed to realize that deeper bench depth. And there has been a realization that there may not even be enough support staff within those departments to share. So the question tonight is, where do we go from here? What makes sense for the various departments and what's affordable to the taxpayers? Perhaps we need more to just debate this ourselves, although this may be a very good start. We're left with the major question and just who is the logical person to answer them. There is no administrator, no public works director, and an interim deputy reinstated 3 weeks ago. We all have our work cut out for us. This may also be a time to assemble a representative group to help frame and add to the conversation. Is the combined public works department desirable and or realistic? Just because we were asked to make a snap decision back in December doesn't mean we have to repeat history now. I just thought it was important to sort of frame how we got here, and maybe it really will kind of lead the discussion about, does it make sense to stay or does it make sense to regroup?
Thank you. Andy?
I think we should, my personal opinion, seeing as that's what we're throwing around here. Gary is still doing what Gary was doing before. So, I personally don't think we need a DPW department. I think Gary is, I think part of that was a personality conflict with our administrator and Gary, not on your part. So, we do need a highway superintendent, obviously. So, but do we need an actual DPW department? I don't think so. I think Gary and Doug can continue to get along just like they did a year ago or 2 years ago before this happened. And, did anybody have any huge complaints about the way Gary was running the buildings and grounds and whatnot? It's just, it all come down to a title, basically. We got into this title thing with Justin, and we need to go back to doing what gets the job done, I guess. And I have no problem admitting that I voted for the DPW. But let's get past, who did and who didn't. Who cares? If we vote for something and it turns out being wrong, then let's change it. I have no problem with admitting if I made a mistake. And that was one of the big ones, in my opinion, along with hiring him. So.
Before we move on, I just want to tell our attorney that yell at us if we get into executive session stuff, but I'd like to stay in open session as much as we can. Mr. Lattimore?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how many of us believe in the CGR report now that we've seen parts of it. I think there was some input at the end of that might have been from our previous hire and might have pushed things to that direction from supposedly an independent. But, this county has to do so many roads a year. Did we accomplish that this year? Did we hit our marks? We did hit the marks.
The marks that I've had, yes.
Is it keeping up with what we have to do to maintain the roads?
No.
we have to do more.
We should,
I
but
never will.
it's not, it comes back to budget.
Yeah. But my question to the chair is whether we sit down with private sector and see whether or not we can do more roads with a combination of government and some of the contractors that have been doing our highway work for many, many years, to see whether or not we can improve the quality in the, I'd like to see our roads last longer than, and if it costs more to do that and leave them alone, I think that's the way we should go as a county.
I agree. Something that would help significantly with that is to have somebody in place longer than 6 months to come up with a plan. We start down a road and then things change, and we go down that road and things change again. And we're not accomplishing much that way. I don't know if anybody was in favor or is in favor strongly of the DPW and has an explanation of what it's saving us or gaining us. I struggle with that. I don't know what we gained by the DPW. But Mr. Mahoning?
So I think this is, and again, my opinion, we're putting the cart again in front of the horse again. We should have a discussion about our county administrator and where we're going on that road, and they should be coming back to us with a recommendation of what this is saving us or not saving us. Because I feel like we continue to overstep our roles and try to run day-to-day operations where we shouldn't be running day-to-day operations. The majority voted for this, and that's fine. And whether if I could take my vote back, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. I would just like information from someone that is sitting in the county administrator's seat and our department heads that are impacted by this, and to say this is what we should be doing. This is what, for us to sit up here and just pass judgment. I know that's what we're elected to do, but we're not getting the full story. I want everybody's. And it can't happen in this form, I don't think. So I think if we had someone in that county administrator role or we discuss that role, we can get that information. And they can meet with the department heads impacted by this and report out to us exactly what they need, what they want, and what's the best avenue going forward. So I think we should probably be talking about county administrator before we talk about DPW.
And on that, I would just like to clarify that if this body walks out of here tonight with a decision on the direction they'd like to go, that's great, so be it. But if not, we've started the conversation,
Yep.
and I hope the ball keeps rolling, and that conversation is coming in the next 2 weeks. So hopefully this ball will get moving, we'll have that conversation on top of it, and hopefully we can do something. Mr. Pinckney?
I'd kind of like to piggyback on what Andy and Pat have both said, that I think the communication, the lack of communication is what's hurt us. And I think that if the county administrator position or whatever that position may end up being, as long as that does not shut us down like the communication through the committee situation did this year, that's where I think things start to break down. We can't make decisions if we can't communicate. And in this past go-round, communications seemed to be shut off. I don't think we were overstepping our bounds. We stepped back for the first time in quite a while and tried to let something formulate that we decided that we were going to support as a body, and it didn't work out that way either. So for every move we've made, there's been repercussions on each side. So going forward, I just think communication has to be from the departments to the administrator or whatever that thing is to the legislature. It has to be wide open.
I agree with that. However, in the past, administrators have not always kept that path open either. So I don't know. I don't have the answer, but Mr. DeForest?
The one thing that I feel needs to be defended is the CGR report. We vetted several providers before we hired them, and the administrator may or may not have had some influence towards the end. I don't necessarily buy that. The contract was with the legislature, not with the administrator, and the administrator hadn't even been here a month. So did he have input? Well, I'm sure he had some input, but did he make any decisions on the final report? I doubt that very much. They were hired to do an independent study. I don't know with DPW whether that was the right path to go down either, but we had a team of unbiased professionals who have had a lot of experience in doing this kind of thing, and I would hope we think very carefully before we make a snap judgment on how that department goes. You know, there's talk, well, I don't see where it saved any money. Well, it's hard for something to save money when there's no top dog to administer and give the game plan on how that department is supposed to go. And we've obviously been lacking that for 3 or 4 months now. I'm not saying that the former administrator would have ironed that out, but we'll never know that one way or the other.
Mr. Ripley.
I gotta go with Andy back there. This, I had high hopes on the DPW thing. I was one that voted for it as well. It was a total failure. Not just this county, all throughout towns as well. That's just, it was a horrible mistake. We had to step back, take a different look at this picture, put the right people in there, and I think moving forward with Carl would be the right decision at this point. As far as the CGR goes, I know that JW had input on that thing from the get-go. He was already playing a part in that. True, we hired that team before JW, but he had his fingers in everything. And we only got his take on it. Whatever direction we were going, we were getting his take. And he would muscle his way through there and confuse everybody. That was the right decision, getting rid of that man. Regardless of the money that we were paying, that was, we were doomed to failure from that from the get-go. Getting rid of the DPW, put these 2 guys back to work the way they should be, and we'd be saving some money.
Mr. DeForest.
The report was available to all of us at any given time. Did we exercise due diligence?
No.
Mr. Dennison.
Maybe, I mean, should we get input from the people who have to work with our DPW, the towns and whatnot, the other highway departments? I mean, we have a gentleman here tonight who's always here because he's quite concerned about that. So I'm just, you know, what I guess my whole problem is, what's Department of Public Works supposed to look like? Is it, you know, I mean, what was, it seemed to be when Dave was here, he spent most of his time over to the park, you know, building a big, beautiful office, so to speak. And what is more concerning to us, our highway division, or worrying about parks and buildings and grounds? I think that was pretty much covered pretty well beforehand with the 2 gentlemen sitting over here. I mean, maybe others of you disagree. If you do, so be it. But so that part of it, I don't have a huge concern with. I mean, I guess the biggest concern is the highway department. So do you need a Department of Public Works to shore up your highway department? Or do we need to put the right people in the right positions in a highway department? And go back to, I mean, was it broke? Was what we were doing before broke, other than maybe a person wasn't in the right position?
Personally, I feel like, I agree, buildings and grounds, parks has been under control as long as I've been here. It's not really been a concern of ours. We work on the budget for that, and things happen, and it's just highway, year after year, has been underfunded and understaffed. So I struggled with the solution being more management. I'm not sure how that maintains more roads. We're still not giving them the employees they need. And I do feel we've made progress in the equipment department. They're getting more equipment than they were in previous years. We've been maintaining their buildings a little better in recent years. However, I think they're still lacking what they need, and I'm not sure more upper management is that solution, but it's my opinion. Does anybody have a direction we'd like to go? We can task this to Public Works. We can get some feedback from towns. We can go ahead and get rid of the DPW. I mean, is there a flavor of the body at this time, or?
I'd like to get
Mr. Dennison.
our outer, the people who work with them, get some opinions there before we make any major decisions.
Yeah, I'm not asking anybody to rush into anything.
The president of the highway.
I'll just speak.
If you'd like to have privilege of the floor and come up and speak, by all means.
I can stand right here. Just as the president of the Towns Association, when this all came about, we were kind of wondering what Justin was thinking. Why fix something that's broken? DPW, Parks and Grounds and Recreation, from everybody in the county heard Gary was doing a fine job, leave Gary doing a fine job. Why did we spend $200,000 a year to bring in 2 more people to manage when you don't have enough people in the highway department to manage? I agree with your chair. You need to get your workforce numbers up, maybe management level. A majority of the towns, just talking to them over the last couple of weeks, and I don't get paid to come here. I come here because I care about our county. I've lived in this county the whole life. Maybe you have to think about your highway superintendent being an elected position. Because if they don't do their job, it's just like us town guys. We don't do our job, we're gone. It's like you folks, you don't do your job, you're gone. But I think a majority of them, listening on the phone the last couple of weeks, getting emails, do away with the DPW. Concentrate on your highway department. Your highway department, and I'm telling you what you hear and see out in the workforce is our roads stink in this county compared to a lot of places. We need to get our roads back up to shape, keep them up to shape. We need our numbers of our county highway workers up too. Talking with some Bass County workers, they used to chip, it's oil and stone, what we call chipping, over 100 miles a year. I think last year, Cayuga County did 13 miles. That's your biggest savings is oil and stone and roads after they're done. You have a road that you spent, I don't know what you spent on it last year as a county, East Venice Road down in our town. Take a ride down there and look at the money you guys spent. Rosselli's, the contractor did a horrible job. That road, if you don't chip seal that road this year, you might as well have taken that $300,000-400,000 you spent on that road and just given it to somebody, because it's not gonna last. Gotta look at these roads and work with the towns. We're the eyes and ears of the highway department working with these guys. now that Rob is down in Venice and I are working close together, well, concentrate on your towns. Your towns are gonna be the ones that are gonna help you the most. Listen to your town folks. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Mr. Lattimore?
I'd just like to follow through on that. Are you working well with some of the independent contractors to maybe cut costs for the county and extend maybe how many miles of roads we do?
Yes.
Is that working?
We're trying. For instance, the state called me up. They milled 34 from pretty much here to Tompkins County line. They ground it up. They gave us the millings because the state doesn't want them. We took the millings. We're going to regrind them next year and we're going to save about $72 a ton on blacktop because we took these, going to mill them and put it back in. Our county could have done that. You know, I mean, it's things we got to look at that way to save money and cut costs.
Mr. DeForest?
I don't disagree with what Steve's saying at all. What I will say is, we have a long history of the county having millings in the milling city.
I agree.
And that didn't happen in the last 2 years. That's happened the 4 years I've been here, and I think before I got here. So, we talked about things weren't broken before, but having been here 4 years and being on Public Works for 4 years, all I heard about was highway, and I think if we're all honest, all any of you heard about was things aren't working at highway. So it's not new. I know we gotta come up with a solution, and I'm all for that, but, you know, I don't know that we're any worse off than we were 2 years ago, or, you know, at least from the griping I just did. So, and one of the problems that we've gone round and round on is staffing of that department. Concerns that we have had difficulties with disciplinary action or getting workers to toe the line or whatever. And that's nothing new. So, you know, I don't know how we tackle it all, but to make it sound like it's just something that happened in the last year and a half or 2 years has been progress.
Mr. Dennison?
Well, the county did get millings off 176, because that's at the Ira barn. And it's my understanding we get to trade that in for run a crush or something? Or get some kind of deal, something cheaper?
We'll trade you up, run a crush for millings.
So the thing that I would like to comment is a couple of things. One is we've been hauling millings ever since we were able to get millings. We have millings in Ira, we have millings in Auburn, we have millings in Venice. So I don't know what you're referring to, Steve, as far as we're not hauling millings, because we are. And we have the whole time. So now we look at chip sealing a road. Chip sealing a road is a good thing to do. But sometimes too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And that's what's happened here. It may be just a matter of opinion, but I can tell you, if you ride down the county roads and you take a look at what you refer to as bleeding, that's because there's been so much oil poured onto these roads that now they're bleeding. We have to take regular, just dry stone and go out there and lay the stone down over the wet oil that's coming out of the roads. Yeah, it sounds good to say, we chip sealed 100 miles of road. But that doesn't mean it is what you needed to do. It's just to make it look good, to pad the numbers. That's all it is. And if you don't know and understand what that all is about, you're going to buy into it. And you're going to think, wow, we did 100 miles. We must have done great. Not really. Suitco probably did great. They sold a lot of oil. And they just keep pouring it on and pouring it on and pouring it on. And finally, some point in time, you have to say, wait a minute. We have to rebuild these roads and recreate a structured road that's gonna last, like Indian Field, where we did an FDR, and we're laying down, base and binder, so that it'll last 20 years, not 5. So, does it cost more? Absolutely. It costs a lot more than to just throw stone on a road. That's the problem. Now, there are places for chip sealing. I'm planning to chip seal a number of roads this year. Fairhaven, down where he was just talking about, down in East Venice. East Venice, they put a binder down, and when they put a binder down, you can let that sit for a year, and then you come back and you put a chip seal over it, or maybe you put a top. And if you put a top, that's even a little bit better than a chip seal, because it'll last. In fact, if you look at the state, even the state recognizes that chip sealing is just a temporary solution to what you're really trying to do. They didn't even in CHIPS money, they wouldn't, at one point in time, they would not reimburse you if you chip seal, because they didn't look at it as a 10-year fix. They looked at it as like a 5. Now, what, am I gonna say that they won't reimburse you? No, they will, but like we got reimbursed for 1 chip seal last year, but that was because we called, we needed 1 more reimbursement. They said, what else have you got? We said a chip seal. Okay, put that in there. But they don't like to do it. So you really gotta understand, you know, it's easy to say, yeah, we chip sealed 100 miles of road, but that doesn't mean you're really doing what you should be. And I guess the only other thing that I'll say is, when I got here, and to give Mr. Gardner any kind of credit, you know, he was on an uphill road. There was no doubt about that. Because we, and him and I, when we first started out, had to create a DPW out of nothing. And so that was really difficult, because there was no DPW administration, none at all. So what did you use? Highway administration? You really couldn't, because as I kept saying, and I think maybe that's where him and I started to see differently, but we said, like I was going, you can't take my highway administration, I need them. So that was difficult too. My opinion is, I think, and I'd recommend, I guess, is maybe consider to go back to what it is, the superintendent of highways and buildings and grounds doing what they're doing, which I think they're doing a fine job. And I think highway can too. So, that's all I have.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Elaine?
And, you know, to his point, I guess, you know, is there potential to consolidate staff and resources, or isn't there? That's, I mean, because when you talk about consolidating things, that's what the buzz is, and, you know, we can share staff and resources, and we can be more efficient. If that's not possible, that's the first question that has to be answered. And the thing that bothers me the most, this was a quite expensive proposal, the way it was handled, and the answer to that, to make it sound affordable, was to eliminate what seems to be the workers that are absolutely necessary to get the work done. So that's what we bought into. We bought into, you can afford these salaries because, you know, I believe you can cut those two key positions, and that's what made it affordable. And that doesn't seem to be the case at all. So is there a way that, you know, can we consolidate functions? And what is affordable to do is really, I think, those are the key questions that have to be answered. And maybe there is a group that somebody, to Pat's point, someone has to be able to give us some insight and answer to some of those questions, because I don't know that individually we can do that.
Mr. Foley?
You know, here's the thing. I mean, we can wait until we get an administrator, but we have a guy that's running the show at our county and is responsible for those duties. It's a good idea to listen to the towns and villages and get their input, but at the end of the day, we should probably be taking guidance and advice from the guy we pay to do the job, right? And so, why don't we include him on a direction that we want to go in and say, hey, propose something, we'll review it and move forward or not. And-
Are you referring to Carl or Lloyd?
Yeah, Carl, yes. I don't know anybody else we hired, hopefully.
I didn't know if you were talking about Lloyd.
Oh, okay.
Because we were talking
No,
about
no,
administrative
Carl,
position.
Carl,
I just
yeah.
wanted to be clear.
No, until we at least get an administrator, we can lean on Carl and have him.
It's a lot of weight on his shoulders
Yeah.
already. But yeah, I
Yeah,
get
I want it to be, but, he's worked at the department long enough to say, hey, you know what, I really think we need more workers in this area or this area. Can the legislature move forward with this plan? I don't think we need an administrator to tell us that and to run that through. We can certainly go in the path of an administrator at some point, but we can listen to Carl for now. I think that's a good idea, so, I don't know. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here, that's what I'm hoping is the case.
Mr. Lattimore.
Well, as Carl just said, if the 100 miles of chipping and oil is putting lipstick on a pig, then we should change the procedure down there and make sure that the roads are maintained for, put it down as, put the base down better than what we're doing. I mean, if the procedure's wrong, then we should change it over.
I mean, I hate to say this, but I do somewhat agree with Ryan. I mean, we have somebody that's up to his knees in it and knows what's going on, and I think we should at least hear him out and listen to him. Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, too bad. Yeah, I'd like to sort of agree with Ryan too, and, yeah, believe me, this is killing me. I mean, my wife's probably home looking at my life insurance policy on this one already.
He
But
said sort of.
but no, Ryan does make sense. We do have a person down at the county right now, county garage, the highway department, that has an understanding what has been going on for the last 8 months or so, hopefully. And I believe that we should really step back and take a look at going back to the way the highway department was situated, the way we don't need a DPW and stuff. The only thing that really scares me and really bothers me is, too bad this is happening during an election year when we're gonna have a lot of grandstanding and stuff. And I think we really have to stop and take a look back for the taxpayers and not for the different parties that are being pushed for, and say, hey, this is what we need. We need the roads taken care of. We need the parks and recreation taken care of and stuff. And I think we really need to take a look at going back to what we had before we formed the DPW.
Okay. Mr. Bunick.
So my comments earlier about the administrator, getting an administrator discussion going, that was to facilitate the department heads that were going to be involved in this. Carl, I appreciate your comments. I would also say that I drive a lot, and not just in Cayuga County, but all over the place. When you compare our roads, as bad as they may appear to be, they're in pretty good shape. I mean, when you really look at it and you look at when you go outside of Cayuga County, is it perfect? Nope. But I can tell you that I go to Tompkins County, I've been driving all over the place, and our roads are in great shape. Not great shape, better shape than most. But I would also look at Gary and Doug. What's your input on this? And
Gary?
Well, I've been here 16 years. When I came in 2003, there was a Department of Public Works. At that time, the Director of Public Works was out of the Highway Department. I don't know what was going on with buildings and grounds because I was hired for parks. So I can't really comment on buildings and grounds at that time. But I can tell you that the Director of Public Works at that time didn't do anything at all for buildings and grounds or parks. He was consumed by the Highway Department, which is, I think, what probably should have happened this last time and didn't necessarily happen. So that's when they went away from Public Works and split it up. Most recently, I appreciate some of the nice, kind words and so on. I did step back a little bit for a while, and I didn't come to the meetings because frankly, I think every one of you knows why. And that problem's gone, I'm back. And I'm happy about that. But I think that in fairness to whoever you have in the highway department, if you don't have two people there to manage that department, you're asking for trouble. So whether you want to do it with a DPW or without a DPW, that's up to you, obviously. But to me, I didn't need somebody to tell me what to do with the buildings. And to be honest with you, I've submitted capital plan upon capital plan upon capital plan, and you guys just never rule on them, which is your right. Whether you would have if the Director of Public Works gave you the same plan, maybe you would rule on it, I don't know. But, I think, personally, I think that the DPW was a waste of time and money. I regret all the time I spent trying to work with the people. And the one thing that I really was optimistic about was supporting clerical staff, because we have one part-time person doing buildings and grounds in the Parks Department. They have 3 full-time people. You say, well, it's a much larger department. Well, in the summertime, our department's as big as this department. And we got to pay all those people. We got to do MSDs for all those people. And we have to take them all off with MSDs. There's an awful lot of clerical work that goes into it. And I've been asking them if I can get a little clerical help, and I can't get any clerical help. So that part didn't work. As far as the picking up millings and that type of thing, the highway department, the whole 16 years I've been here, actually, with the exception of the first couple of years, to be honest with you, at that time it wasn't working, but for most of the 16 years that I was here, we sent an email, we need stone delivered to this trail or that trail, and within a week or two, we've got our stone, We've always cooperated. We've cooperated with equipment. If they need our Bobcat, they call me up and say, we need the Bobcat, and they get the Bobcat, or the backhoe, or whatever they need, because we know how important it is to maintain the road. So I don't think from a cooperation standpoint, we really have a problem. I don't think you ever would. I mean, we'll share and share alike, and I'm sure that the highway department always has, with the exception of the clerical help. I'm struggling for clerical help.
And I guess what I don't understand, and I don't know if there's a legal wall, if there's a budgeting wall, or what the wall is that says our departments can't share staff unless they're under the same umbrella. I mean, why do we need a DPW to share clerical staff or not? And that doesn't sound like that's what the problem is, but why would we create a separate DPW to share staff? I mean, our departments can share staff. So I don't think it's going to restrict any that or any shared services between the departments.
I think the issue with the staff training is apparently the highway doesn't have enough staff to share either. I was hopeful that they would, but they don't, and I know I don't.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Vitale.
Thanks. I think most people know where I've stood with the DPW from the very beginning. The one thing that it had the opportunity to do for the county would be to cut the number of direct reports to administrator. The issue is that, all this conversation tonight and talking things out in the public is good. And it probably wouldn't hurt to get some other groups to have some discussions and get some feedback. But I think more of it relates to what we're going to do at the county level in the upper, whether we have administrator, whether we go with the old-fashioned, the chairman's the administrator, do other things, who knows? I think all of those discussions has to be included and encompasses one decision in the end. To make a decision on DPW at this point in time, before we have a plan for the rest, I think is a mistake. I think I think doing things on an interim basis until we have that final decision is not a bad thing. But in that meantime, I don't think it hurts to get input from other people, for whether it be our Public Works Committee or whoever, to get input from other people so that we have a better opportunity to make the right decision. I guess the only thing I'm warning of is not to overreact, and to make sure we have the top figured out as we go down through, because this is kind of one of the things that happened when we formed the DPW. The director didn't have the opportunity to select their own deputy. There was a lot of missteps there, and then the other thing is, you look at history. We did have a DPW at one time, and we eliminated it. Why? Obviously, there's reasons and things. So I'm just kind of recommending a little bit of caution, but it sure doesn't hurt to gather the information while we're taking caution.
So you say input from other people, I mean, who outside of this room, towns, villages, is that what you're?
Well, you could just go any direction you want to go. I mean, towns and villages, you can look at our, get input from our department heads. You can get input from staff possibly. I would just be careful, and put everything you get in perspective from where it comes. I guess that's one of the things I look at as a legislator. When you get information from different groups, you always want to make sure you put it in the right perspective.
Who leads this one?
Mr. DeForest?
One of the things I worry about, any knee-jerk reactions out of this too, is that part of this whole picture is that when you hear it, okay, it sounds like highway doesn't have enough clerical, parks doesn't have enough clerical, buildings and grounds doesn't have enough clerical. That's all part of the package too. I mean, just making a knee-jerk reaction and not addressing every part of the problem, or at least identifying and admitting there is a problem and there are vacancies that need to be filled across the board.
Well, I mean,
It's a
on
big
that.
picture thing. It's not.
Yeah, and on that note, we could get rid of the DPW tonight. It's not going to give Carl any more staff tomorrow.
No.
Though it now is a good time for us to have this conversation and consider it, because we're rolling into the budget. And that's going to free up quite a bit of money if there's no director of DPW to do other things with, or not, whatever we decide. Mr. Mahoonic.
I just want to go on record, I didn't, but one comment out, I did not agree with Ryan on anything.
Wow.
Mr. Dennison.
I get it. Gary says, he needs clerical help. Apparently, there's not enough clerical help over there. We also got to take into consideration, we're a shrinking county, but apparently our government isn't. I'll continue to harp on that part of the CGI report, but anyways, we need to look, if we're gonna hire more people, we need to, I guess, try and find other ways to save if we can. I mean, and we're always told, we're not supposed to micromanage, but I know, and I'm probably not with you, Carl, but I did mention it to Dave, and I know I mentioned it to George before, that, and I mentioned it to Justin, because it kind of ticked me off that the fuel truck 3-4 times a week drives out to, the barn in Ira with a 300-gallon tank on it, and parks off on a back road to take a nap and whatnot. Well, there's a guy in the field right there, if you put in a couple 1,000-gallon tank, that you could just have the fuel company come and fill once a week or something. And again, I'm not supposed to micromanage, but it's the simple things like that. There's a guy that's driving a $75,000, $80,000 truck putting 45 miles round trip that way, and I'm gonna assume he's doing it to the south too to fill up a small tank. You know, there's a truck we're not buying, there's a body that's in the field as opposed to sitting in a truck taking a nap, and I don't have a problem saying that, because I caught him. You know, you shouldn't take a nap on a back road where a legislator owns property, not a good idea. But anyways, and I brought that forward to the administrator and to Dave too, so it's not a secret. You know, there's things like that that we need to have somebody in that position that can look at those things. Okay, yes, we need this, we need that, but what can we do without? What can we do different to try and save money also? Because, again, we're a shrinking county, so.
Mr. Foley?
Just my only thing, I'm for waiting on all of this stuff and trying to look at it from the big picture and big perspective. My only concern is that we try to make sure we have some pieces in place by the time winter comes, because it's already September. I think this year has kind of flown by, but by the time winter gets here, the snow starts flying. The last thing we want to hear is that the highway is understaffed and they can't clear roads or whatever is going to happen. I'm not saying we have to rush anything. What I am saying, though, is that we try to get some pieces in place in time to make sure that everything is good for at least winter, and then we can kind of go from there.
Would it be fair to say, to task Carl with coming to Public Works with essentially his wish list, so we can tell him he can't have anything on it? You know, what does he need for staffing to maintain where we're at now in highway? What are the needs for staffing / equipment to move forward in highway? Something along those lines. I mean, I'm not saying we got to walk out of here with a resolution on anything tonight, but I'd like to keep moving forward with the conversation. Pat?
I think if we task Carl with that, I think we also have to task Gary and Doug with that, and maybe get them together in a room to see, is there any place to share any services? Or this is what we need in the highway, this is what we need at buildings and grounds and parks, and let them all come together and bring that to Public Works. I think that would make the most sense, because we seem to be focusing just on highway and not so much on the entire
Yeah, they might be
package.
able to share something.
I'm good with that as long as they bring forward the other part too that I just mentioned. Where could we possibly save some money by buying a bigger fuel tank and stuff like that?
Okay. Mr. Bennett?
I believe we can stand to benefit from that, and I also believe that we stand to benefit now that we don't have a county administrator, and our department heads can freely come and speak to the legislative body and the legislators without being held almost as in contempt or so of, if they were to come to us without going to whoever they were supposed to go to, whether it's the administrator. So they should be able to feel comfortable being able to come and talk to any one of us legislators or the whole legislative body at any given time.
Would you guys be able to do that? Get together sometime before Public Works and put something together?
Sure.
I know it's not going to be a perfect list, but Carl?
I think they got an idea.
Go ahead.
One thing I want to say, and I think everything that's being talked about is extremely important, and I think we're hitting the nail on the head. And keep in mind that there's a lot of things, and especially at highway, that need to be looked at, that need to be resolved or changed or fixed or whatever. But it takes a considerable amount of time to be able to get there. And I think you have to be careful just on how you do that. You don't, like, as we all know, we don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction and just start changing things for the sake of changing things. Fuel truck being a good point. I've heard of that myself. Have I ever seen that happen? No. I didn't know who it was. I know now Andy was involved in it. But, so that was kind of being looked at. When I first got here, I thought it was very odd that the highway department was actually delivering fuel. Kind of seemed weird to me. I never heard of it before. But, again, it's one of those things that you say, well, we'll address that in due time, because right now we've got other priorities that we need to take care of. So I think what I'm basically trying to say is it's an ongoing process of all these things. Can we come up within a week to truly label and put down everything we got? No, we probably can't, but, you know, I'm sure we could make some progress.
Mr. Lattimore?
Well, also included in that would be a nice understanding. I know that, you know, we talked about, are the towns going to plow these roads for the county and that? I mean, I'd love to have shared services with the towns in the county, you know, making sure that equipment, warehousing.
That's
and-
something we've been working on for a few years now.
I know, but I mean-
I think we need to keep moving on that.
Be nice to have the state help us with that and make sure that everybody's happy with the formula we come up with.
Charlie?
My comment is, I know the towns are waiting with bated breath to get this contract done for who's following what roads and what payment for the. They need to know that so that they can do the budget. And we're on it now. The town should be doing their preliminary this month. They need that information, and we're holding it up.
So that should be a priority.
Mr. Foley?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask Carl. We might not need a master plan for his department by,
No, we
by
just need to.
Week.
but maybe I need a list of, like, must-have priorities or something that you think that would be, you know, reasonable?
So if that's our direction for now, do we want to move on to the resolutions?
Oh, absolutely.
Pledge 1, creating a capital reserve for buildings and creating repair reserves for buildings and highways.
Second.
Discussion. Who moved that? Paul?
Yes.
So Lynn, I just questioned, has this got some of the cleanup in it?
Yeah, we're gonna consolidate, 6 reserves into 3.
Okay,
So we'll have a little less confusion.
Thanks.
We'll know what to use them during the reserves.
great.
Andy?
So what are the three gonna be called then? I mean, what?
There's gonna be a buildings repair reserve, a buildings capital reserve, and a highway repair reserve.
Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. Lattimore?
I think last week, did we put in reserves, $5 million for buildings, is it?
No.
It was spread across the 2 million for a building, 2 million for highway, and about 1 million for repair.
Do you feel that that's over reserving, or do we need that
Too late
capital?
now.
What's your vote, Lynn?
We already did
My
it.
goodness.
I know we did it.
Any other discussion on ledge 1?
I don't know whether that's right.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's carried. Ledge 2, fixing day and notice of public hearing on pursuant to New York General Municipal Law 6D to make appropriations from the Buildings Repair Reserve.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Bennett? No? Any discussion on this one?
Courthouse steps?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, is there any other discussion or business to be had here tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all.
Lane.
Famous.